On today's show, we continue our early impressions of the most intriguing prospects for the Houston Rockets if they keep the 10th overall pick in this year's NBA draft. We'll be taking a look at certified bucket Tre Johnson, the high-level floor spacer Kon Knueppel, and the athletic, versatile 3-and-D big Rashier Fleming. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Just head on over to FanDuel.com. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. We continue our early impressions, kind of draft prep here at Locked On Rockets. If you missed our first episode, we took a look at Kasparas Shakusionis, Carter Bryant, and Kaman Malowach. So go check that episode out if you missed that. We're going to be doing kind of these preliminary episodes with these quick little early impressions on a bunch of different prospects for the Houston Rockets to consider in this year's NBA draft before doing deep dive profiles on the prospects that we think would be the best fits or the best possible candidates to be drafted by the Rockets with that 10th overall selection. So on today's show, we're going to be getting into the certified bucket getter from Texas, Tre Johnson, Duke's high-level floor spacer, Kon Knueppel, and then Rashier Fleming, athletic, versatile 3-and-D big man. A lot to like there. Really like all three of these prospects, actually. And so let's start things off with Tre Johnson. Let's go out to our local expert for more here.
Tre Johnson is a walking bucket. What's up, guys and gals? BK with Locked On Longhorns here, telling you about maybe the best scorer in this year's draft. Tre Johnson, as a true freshman, led the SEC in scoring a season ago, averaging close to 20 points per game. Remember, the SEC, the best conference in college basketball history this past year. Tre Johnson stood alone atop the league. He is a true three-level scorer. He can hit threes. He can make from the mid-range. He can slash and finish at the 10 as well. He's also a great free throw shooter to boot. This game has always been about getting buckets, and Tre Johnson can get you some buckets. He's an emotional player. He wears his heart on his sleeve, but man, when he gets hot, he is tough to stop, and he is going to make one fan base very, very happy at the next level. For more on the Texas Longhorns, subscribe to Locked On Longhorns on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, now, quick disclaimer here. Tre Johnson is very unlikely to be on the board when the Rockets are picking at number 10, but a lot of Rockets fans wanted to hear about him, and he is a very intriguing prospect. And he's actually a guy that I'd go so far as to say the talent level there might be worth the idea of exploring a trade up possibility. I'd go so far as to consider maybe something like a trade involving, the Rockets moving the 10th pick for like maybe the Wizards with like the 6th pick and like, I don't know, maybe like 10 and Cam Whitmore for like 6 and 18. Like, is that fair enough value, right? Like, does Cam Whitmore get you 4 spots up and then you still get, another pick back? Is that a fair trade for the Wizard? I don't know. Something like that, maybe, could be a framework for the Rockets to consider, depending on their internal evaluation of Tre Johnson. But look, there is a lot to like with Tre Johnson. Before I share my thoughts about him, I want to get to kind of the draft breakdown from our resident draft expert over at Locked On NBA Big Board, Rafael Barlow. So let's hear about Tre Johnson's strengths here. Johnson came into his freshman season at Texas with the reputation as one of the best shot makers in the class, and he backed it up. He led the SEC in scoring at 19.9 points per game, arguably the most competitive conference in college basketball history, and he did it on strong efficiency, 39.7% from three on 6.8 attempts per game and 86% from the free throw line. He also chipped in 3.1 rebounds and 2.7 assists per game. He's a pure bucket getter. He plays with confidence, has deep range, and thrives in tough shot-making situations, particularly in the mid-range. He plays with an edge and a competitive fire that's easy to recognize. A lot to like with Tre Johnson. He really does fit the profile as a truly certified bucket getter. Can do it in a variety of ways. 6'6", 6'10" wingspan, and the thing too is, it's not just he's not this like explosive, like 99th percentile athlete where he's just, better than everybody else on the floor from a physicals perspective. He actually has to work for some of his buckets. Right now, I'm not saying he's not athletic, but he has some craft to his game. Like his ability to get to the spots that he wants to get to on the floor is really impressive, right? Whether it's him isolating on the perimeter and getting to a step back 3-pointer, or driving and getting to the rim, or drawing two defenders. And, he's surprisingly kind of unselfish, right? His ability to involve his teammates and draw that second defender and just make a simple pass. He's had a number of like kind of those, draws the second defender and a little, wraparound pass to, a cutting player right there at the rim. Or getting to his mid-range bag, right, where he likes to put a defender on his hip, and finish with the pull-up midi, or get to kind of not like operating out of the mid post, but driving and then turn around and finishing like the prototypical kind of mid-range fadeaway kind of bag. And for the Rockets, still missing that de facto kind of number one option, that certified bucket getter, and a guy who can do it in a variety of different ways, right? Finishing at the rim, getting downhill, scoring in the mid-range, isolating on the perimeter. Like, that guy is supposed to be Jalen Green. It is. And Jalen Green has done it at times, but Jalen Green, TBD on what his future looks like, and if he's going to be able to really thrive in what is, ultimately the physicality of the NBA is the thing that, especially in the playoffs, is going to be a big hurdle for Jalen Green to eventually overcome. Generally, guys who are built like Jalen need an elite handle, or elite playmaking skills, or to just be a flat out elite shooter, in order to overcome some of the size and strength concerns with a player who needs to be able to get downhill and finish around the rim and that kind of stuff, or just adding a little bit more craft to his game, right? Maybe a float game, mid-range bag, whatever. Tre Johnson would be coming in weighing about 190 pounds, right? He's already bigger than Jalen Green is, and he's got a good sized frame that you'd envision him being able to add another, 5, 10, 15 pounds of muscle to over time. And imagining him bulking up and getting to a place where, again, 6'6", 6'10" wingspan, has the ability to get his shot off over guys pretty easily. Really solid handle, right? Really comfortable with the basketball. Doesn't get pressured easily by defenders. There's just a lot to like there about his offensive profile. And again, for a Rockets team that still is kind of looking for that certified go-to scoring option, that would be a very high upside pick potentially for Houston. Now, the downsides with Tre, there are a few areas that scouts have nitpicked. This is, again, Raphael Barlow from NBA Big Board. Shot selection is one. Johnson has a tendency to take tough contested jumpers, and while he can hit them, it's a high degree of difficulty shot diet. There have also been questions about whether he plays selfishly. Personally, I disagree. I think he's a very underrated passer, but it's something teams will want to see more of. Despite averaging 4.2 free throw attempts per game, I'd like to see him get to the rim more consistently. He's so comfortable operating from the perimeter that he sometimes settles instead of forcing defenders to guard him downhill. On the defensive end, he has the tools, but wasn't always locked in, something that's not uncommon for high usage scorers. The real question is whether he'll bring that same energy on both ends. On that last point there, I have very few qualms about or like reservations, I should say, about players being motivated to play defense in an Ime Udoka coach team. Ime got Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun playing defense at a very high level. So I wouldn't worry about it. And plus, like, Johnson's such a fiery competitor, like, guys like that, guys who want to compete like that and who are, that locked in. I think it's generally easier to get them to compete on the defensive side of the ball as well. And it's just more of like a schematic thing and just making sure that they're properly motivated. But the downhill part thing, right, is that is the one major red flag is you don't want a scorer who just falls in love with that perimeter shot. You don't want a guy who, isn't willing to do the dirty work, isn't willing to get downhill and really put pressure on a defense, especially when the going gets tough. But I don't know. There's so much to like about Tre Johnson's game. And again, he would be a guy that of this year's draft class, if the Rockets think there's a chance to get him at 5 or 6 or 7, and it wouldn't take much for them to trade up and get him. And look, I'm not saying it has to be Cam Whitmore thrown into a trade. Maybe it's a future first round pick or something. Maybe something that's like heavily protected down the line, but something where you trade up and get him. That could be a really intriguing high upside pick for the Rockets to potentially bank on somewhere down the line. So definitely want your thoughts on Tre Johnson, his potential fit with the Rockets. Would you want to see the Rockets take a swing on him? Coming up, we'll get to the high level floor spacer out of Duke, Kon Knueppel. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. And FanDuel makes it so easy to stay in the game before tip-off and even live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments, and how could tracking their trends help you actually build your next bet? Right now, you can take a look at the odds on favorites to win the title this year in the NBA. Right now, the OKC Thunder still the favorites at -340, the Pacers +600, the Knicks +850, and then the Timberwolves distant fourth place, now facing an 0-2 deficit at +2400. So all those odds and so much more available over at FanDuel.com. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, let's get to our next prospect here. Kon Knueppel out of Duke, the high-level floor spacing wing. Let's go to our Locked On expert for more.
Kon Knueppel is a wing that will be able to do anything he wants to at the next level. I'm JJ Jackson of Locked On Blue Devils, here to tell you why Kon Knueppel is worth more attention than he's receiving. A lot of things probably went undernoticed about Kon this past season while playing for such a great team. For starters, Kon is actually great size for a wing in the NBA. At 6'7", about 220 pounds. There's really no weakness in his game whatsoever. On a lesser team, he could have easily scored 20 points a game, and he'll likely do that in the NBA. He's a terrific shooter. He's good in the mid-range and has a good judge of when to go to the basket. His 91% shooting from the foul line was amongst the best in the entire country, and there's hardly a time where you felt like he was shooting the basketball too much. And at times throughout the season, Duke fans wanted him to shoot more. With his size, he should be able to hold his own defensively. The only question being his quickness, which again, one could consider underrated. Overall, Kon Knueppel could ultimately be one of the best players in this draft, and especially offensively, where he has no weaknesses. For more Duke basketball news and notes, make sure you check out Locked On Blue Devils.
I really like Kon, and this is another guy where I got to use another disclaimer here. Might not be on the board at 10. There's a chance he's there, might not be there. And he is also a guy that I'd consider if the Rockets, really want to take kind of maybe less of a true like upside swing like Tre Johnson, just because I think Tre Johnson has potential to be like one of the top scorers in the NBA one day. Kon is going to be more of a secondary, tertiary scoring kind of guy. I don't think he's ever going to be like a team's number one option, but just a great connective piece. High level scorer, can do a little bit of everything offensively. And yeah, he's a guy that I'd be very interested in the Rockets maybe trading up to get their hands on. But let's go to our breakdown from Rafael Barlow here. Canipple was a guy that I was really high on coming into the season. He opened Big Board 1.0 as my number 8 prospect. There were moments early where I started to second guess that ranking, but by the end of the season, he had fully settled in as one of the more consistent and efficient players in college basketball. He finished the year averaging 14.4 points, 4.1 rebounds per game on 48, 40, 91 shooting splits. That's 48% from the floor, 40% from downtown, and 91% from the free throw line. He knocked down 40% of his threes on 5 attempts per game and showed real value as a connective passer within Duke's offense. His chemistry with Kon Knueppel was a highlight, especially in the lob game, and his field decision-making and ability to space the floor all point to a seamless NBA role. He projects as a plug-and-play complementary piece, a guy who will knock down open shots, keep the ball moving, and provide some secondary ball handling. He's one of the safer prospects in this class with a high floor thanks to his shooting touch, poise, and intangibles. High floor prospects are really intriguing here for the Rockets, because when you're a team that's already winning at a high level like Houston is, again, it's so tough to balance, right? It's so tough to balance having developmental runway for some of these young guys while also maintaining that winning culture that you've already established. But Kon is a guy that I fully believe that you could just plug and play at the next level, and he's not going to have any issues, right? He could come off the bench and give you a solid 15, 20 minutes a night, day one in the NBA. And yes, he's still going to be a rookie, and there'll be some moments where he has, some rookie mistakes, or some moments where he looks, deer in headlights, or has to get accustomed to the speed of the NBA game. But the skill set is there. He's going to be, an ancillary piece offensively, but he's also not going to just be one dimensional, right? He's not going to be a guy that you just park at the 3-point. He's not your old style, sharpshooter, Steve Novak type, whatever, that can't really do much else offensively. He can give you a little bit of everything, right? He's not afraid to put the ball on the deck, drive, use his dude's built like a Humvee. But use that big body and big shoulders and, bounce guys off of him and finish through contact at the rim. Not afraid to put the ball on the deck, has good vision. Again, that two-man game between him and Kon Knueppel at Duke was really, really impressive. And while the Rockets don't necessarily have a, over the top, where's my button? I lost it. Hang on.
Lob threat.
While the Rockets don't necessarily have themselves a true lob threat quite just yet, unless you're looking at N'Faly Dante potentially, that passing is very legitimate, right? The floor, the court vision is real. And that's a skill that is going to translate in a variety of ways, right? It doesn't necessarily just have to be lob threats. It can be simple little, shovel passes to Alperen Sengun on the roll, or playing that two-man game with Alperen Sengun, right? Coming off DHOs on the perimeter and just lighting it up from downtown. He's got a very quick release. He's a willing shooter. There's a lot to like about his game, and thinking about how it plugs in immediately for the Rockets as early as next season, being able to step in and probably be an impact guy as a rookie. Let's get to some of the weaknesses here from Barlow. There was an early season stretch where I had legitimate concerns. He had a 5 for 20 game against Kentucky, followed by an 8 of 25 stretch across Arizona and Kansas, and only took 3 shots in 31 minutes against Auburn. He also went 4 for 12 in a win over Louisville. During that time, I questioned whether he could score effectively against NBA level athletes. Physically, he doesn't have standout measurables. He's not long, and he's not an explosive athlete. While he held his own defensively in college, he benefited from playing alongside 2 elite defenders in Flag and Malawach. Duke's collective length and the more condensed college floor may have covered for some of his limitations on that end. So the real question is how well he'll defend in space at the NBA level. Still, I believe in the jumper, the IQ, the feel, and the competitive edge. His role at Duke mirrors what he'll be asked to do in the NBA, and with those traits, it's hard to see him not finding a way to stick. That is going to be the question with him, right? The lateral quickness defensively. He's not going to be a guy that gets bullied for his size defensively, but he is a guy that I could very easily see like quick twitch guards wanting to pick on him, right? Dragging him out to the perimeter and trying to isolate on him and then getting downhill. So that'll be an area of concern. Think like when, Think like when Luka gets picked on defensively. Now, the thing is, Luka also just doesn't try on defense a lot of the time. And Kon is not that, right? Kon gives effort. He does try. But there are some maybe physical limitations there. But within the confines of a Rockets defense and an Ime Udoka-led defense where the entire team structure, everybody's connected, everybody's communicating, everybody's working together. There are plenty of opportunities that the Rockets would have to, I guess, protect Kon in a defensive scheme. And I don't know. The quickness concerns might be a little bit overblown. It's not like he's a turnstile defensively. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how he develops at the next level on the defensive side of the floor. But again, really good size. Like not crazy length, not a crazy athlete or anything, but just good size. He's dude is stout, right? Kind of built like a vending machine. But offensively, a ton to like there, and a piece that should be able to fit in pretty flawlessly wherever he goes. But look, shooting is at a premium in the NBA, and shooting is a skill set that this Rockets team desperately needs more of, and that is one thing that Kon Knueppel can absolutely do. Plus, you get the bonus of if the Rockets ever run some offensive actions with Knueppel where he slips, you can call it a nip slip, which is just a ton of fun in and of itself. So with that, I want your thoughts on Kon out of Duke. Let me know your thoughts on him. Coming up, we've got one more prospect to discuss, Rashier Fleming, the versatile, athletic 3-and-D big man. We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, let's get to our final prospect here to discuss Rashier Fleming, the versatile, athletic 3-and-D big, kind of an old school throwback kind of player, actually, weirdly enough, the junior out of St. Joseph. So one of the older players here in this year's NBA draft, a bit of a late bloomer, if you will. Let's go out to our Locked On local expert for more.
Rashier Fleming comes from St. Joe's in the mid-major ranks, perfectly hidden away just like his skill set. Why? Because that's going to allow Fleming to hopefully go back end of the first round to a great team where he can come off the bench and do a whole bunch of the role player things that he does so well. Last year, averaging 14.7 points, 8.5 rebounds, 1.3 assists, 1.4 steals, and 1.5 blocks, while shooting 39% from 3 and 65% from 2. He does that with a 7'5" wingspan at 6'9", 240 that wreaks havoc on the defensive end. What you don't want Fleming doing, though, is handling the ball or trying to create for himself. There's also the lack of experience against high-level competition coming out of the A-10. Is that an issue? Well, I don't know, but I feel confident that his athleticism, length, and motor are going to allow him to succeed right away with the right team in the right role.
Fleming is a super interesting pick here, and he might be a bit of a reach with pick 10, and that's where you get into some discussions, right? Like maybe, right? Like, hell, maybe the Rockets could walk away with Fleming and Tre Johnson if they played their cards right with the Wizards, right? Like if you could entice Washington with a 10 plus Cam Whitmore trade for 6 and 18, and then maybe Fleming is on the board still when you pick at 18, like that would be a crazy kind of draft night switcheroo haul, if you will. So look, there's a lot to like with Fleming. Let me get the read from Raphael Barlow, and then I'll share some of my thoughts on him. Fleming is one of my favorite players in this class and a guy who immediately popped on film, a former teammate of DJ Wagner and Aaron Bradshaw at Camden High. He's the one emerging as a real first-round prospect, despite not getting the McDonald's hype out of high school. What stands out with Fleming is his versatility. He impacts the game as a rim protector, a switchable defender, and a legitimate floor spacer. Got his stats from the local expert, but here it is. He's athletic enough to be a lob threat. And mobile enough to defend in space. That inside-out profile paired with improved shooting touch gives him a real chance to carve out a role early in his NBA career. Fleming is like your old school, like mid-2000s, early 2010s, like stretch 4, right? He's, a kind of a tweener 4-5 build. Maybe there's a role, like I don't want to call him a wing, right? Because he's too big to be called a wing. He weighs 240, right? But he's versatile enough defensively to be able to like guard in space, to be out on the perimeter. And that presents a really interesting kind of profile. And then you start to factor in stuff like his weak side shot blocking and his rim protection and stuff like that, his rebounding ability, his motor. And there's a lot to like there, right? Very high upside pick, a lot to like defensively. Think maybe like, I'm not going to say Robert Williams, because I think Rob Williams is more of like a true 5, but like a smaller Rob Williams with a 3-point shot would be kind of wild. I don't know. There's like, I've seen other comps of like JaMychal Green, but a better defending JaMychal Green, because JaMychal Green wasn't like a phenomenal defender. So a better defending JaMychal Green, or like if Taj Gibson had a 3-point shot, was another comp I saw floating around out there. And those are some really interesting kind of thoughts about like what you could get out of a player like this. And with the way that the NBA has progressed, right, where there are stretches where small ball can be really effective, where you can trot out a guy where, a guy who is, 6'9", 6'10", versatile enough to defend in space on the perimeter, but big enough to still get you some boards, and athletic enough to be a presence on the interior and to still provide rim protection. Despite not being like a true like 7-foot towering presence around the basket. That's kind of how the NBA has evolved, today. So that presents, some really interesting, I think, opportunities there. He's a guy that you could envision playing, either in place of Alperen Sengun as, a small ball 5, or playing alongside Alperen Sengun as, at the 4 spot, right next to him. And because of his weak side capabilities as a weak side rim protector and weak side defender, that's exactly the kind of complementary piece you want next to Sengun. And in a world where you could envision a lineup featuring like Sengun and then like Jabari and Fleming, like all playing off of one another, you definitely don't want Fleming necessarily doing anything perimeter oriented, at least not offensively, but at least on the defensive end, like that's a very stout front line that teams would have a lot of trouble kind of getting through or scoring on. Let's get to some of the downsides here with Fleming. The big question with Fleming is consistency. The talent's never been in doubt, but for much of his college career, the production didn't always match. He's made real strides as a shooter, 29% from 3 as a freshman, 32% as a sophomore, 39% this year on, on attempts per game. Oh, I don't have the attempts pulled up. I apologize. I thought I had that stat saved. So 39%, this year as a junior, but he still has stretches where he fades from games. In the final stretch of the season, he had 3 single-digit scoring games, including 2 where he played over 37 minutes. He looks the part of a potential top 10 guy, but the concern is whether he can consistently assert himself and maximize his tools night in and night out. He's a bit of a late bloomer, and if he can put it all together more consistently, there's serious value here. Yeah, I mean, again, Fleming is probably a reach at pick 10 a little bit. There may be a team out there that takes a look at him and really likes what they see, and then maybe they take a swing. I could very much see him being like a Masai Ujiri pick with like 9 to the Raptors. I could see him going to the Blazers at 11. Like I don't know. There's a lot to like there. Maybe the Hawks with pick 13. Spurs at 14 would be another interesting destination. There's a lot of different teams that could take a flyer on him a little bit earlier than maybe the back half of the first round or just outside of the lottery range. But he definitely has the defensive profile that fits Ime Udoka. And offensively, a guy that's that big, being able to knock down shots from the perimeter at a consistent clip is a pretty distinct value at the NBA level. Whether the shot is consistent is going to kind of probably make or break him, because guys who are 6'9", 6'10", and uber athletes and can be, above average NBA defenders, I'm not going to say they're a dime a dozen, but you can go find guys who can't shoot worth a lick that are big and strong and fast and can defend, but then they completely wreck your floor spacing on the other end, right? And you're sacrificing a lot of offense for, a guy who is, a slight plus defensively, or even a really impactful defender. And that's kind of the ultimate juggling act. But as long as he, even if he can't do anything else offensively, even if he's literally just a screening presence a knockdown three-point shooter from the perimeter, and a lob threat. That is an incredibly versatile offensive player that you can use as your small ball 5, that you can use as a 4 within the offensive scheme. I don't know. I like Rashier Fleming. Maybe I don't like him at pick 10 specifically. Maybe it's an option where the Rockets could trade back a little bit later in the draft and get their hands on him and recoup a future asset, something of that nature. There's plenty of different options here, but Rashier Fleming is certainly a name to keep your eye on if you're a Rockets fan. So I want your thoughts on him. Want your thoughts on Tre Johnson, on Kon Knueppel. Give me your draft thoughts in the YouTube comments. As always, thanks so much for checking out the show. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.